friends, and welcome back to First Chapter Friday. As always, I will be recommending a spooky book because that is where I live. This book is by Lindsay Currie. You may have started to read her because one of her recent books, Scritch Scratch, was part of the Nutmeg awarded for last year. So this is her new book. It is called It Found Us, and when I saw the cover, I absolutely had to read it because it is so very creepy. So I'll read you the first chapter, and so that you're aware, we have lots of Lindsay Currie books, and I would highly recommend. We're going to start doing them for my spooky story book club. If you're interested in that, give us a call and we'll tell you about it too. Chapter 1. I let my bike fall to the ground and scrambled over the edge of Mr. Andrews' house. Dusk is approaching and his lights are out. Everything is quiet except for the rustle of leaves as a long willowy figure creeps across his yard. Narrowing my eyes on the mystery person, I noticed they're wearing boots and one of those thick wraparound sweaters with a hood pulled up over their head. A large rectangular bag is slung over one shoulder. They stop and turn towards the house as if double-checking it for something. For what, though? The porch light, no light shining through the windows. It's obvious Mr. Andrews isn't home. It's also obvious that this person is up to something. I tuck myself further behind the corner of the house and focus on breathing quietly. It's hard since my heart feels like it's going to explode out in my chest. This is how I always get when I'm sleuthing. I'm kind of like the feeling you get from drinking one too many Cokes or eating a whole bag of Sour Patch Kids. A little bit shaky, a little bit sick, but a whole lot excited. Mysteries are my thing, my skill. Once I hear about one, I can't let it go until I solve it. I call it having a puzzle brain. The mystery person suddenly glances in my direction. I pull back until I'm fully hidden and force myself to count to 10 before I ease around the corner again. Setting the bag on the ground, the stranger unzips it and pulls something out. A very small, moving something. A dog. It runs in circles for a few moments before stopping so the figure can connect a leash to its collar. Then it does something so hilarious I almost forget I'm hiding and laugh out loud. It poops in Mr. Andrews' yard. Even though the sun is fading, I can see the little brown blob resting in the center of my neighbor's perfectly manicured grass. This is what he's been complaining about for weeks. The hooligan who's been sneaking onto his lawn. I grin, thinking about my name for them in my clue journal. The Night Pooper. After weeks of taking notes and sneaking around, I finally caught them in action. Only I don't know who it is. Creeping forward until I'm not hidden by the house anymore, but behind the bushes instead, I try to get a better look at the sweatered stranger. Just then, the streetlights blink on. Startled, the person picks up the dog and rushes away. No, I'm so close. I'm halfway out the bushes when a car horn shatters the silence. My mouth flops open when I realize it's not any horn, it's a blue minivan horn. My blue minivan. Even through the dim lights, I can see Mom's face in the window. She's looking from the bike on the ground to me and back to the bike. No. Holding one finger up, I refocus on the person in the street. I just need one more minute, one glance at their face to crack this mystery wide open. Mom honks again, and this time it makes the night pooper stop and turn around. Her hood falls back just enough to reveal her face. Mrs. Cochran! She lives around the corner. Of course it's her. Mrs. Cochran and Mr. Andrews share a fence that separates their backyards. I've heard them arguing more than once. Mr. Andrews tells her to keep her weeds on her side, and Mrs. Cochran tells him to keep his nose out of her business. Guess she decided the best way to get revenge was with a series of little brown packages. Gross. Mom and Mrs. Corcoran exchange an awkward wave. Then Mom's head swivels back towards me, and based on her scrunched up eyebrows, I know exactly what she's thinking. I have some explaining to do. I lumber over, pick up my bike, and wheel it into the garage. Mom pulls in just behind me. The second her car door opens, I hold my hands up. I can explain. Mom crosses both of her hands across her chest. You can explain why you were hiding like a burglar in our neighbor's bushes? Yeah. I mean, sort of. I waffle. Look, Mr. Andrews has been going on and on about the night pooper, so... The what? Mom asks, the edges of her lips turned up into a smile she's clearly fighting. I laugh feebly. The night pooper. That's what I call the person who has been letting their dog, I make a circular motion in my hand, or with my hand, to show that she should know what I'm talking about. There are so many times you can say the word poop before it gets old. On Mrs. Andrews' lawn. Mr. Andrews' lawn. Mom follows me into the house. I'm familiar. But still, Hazel. I know. Sleuthing is okay, meddling is not. I recite the words I've heard so many times before. Problem is, they don't make any sense. No matter how I look at it, I can't figure out the difference between sleuthing and meddling, except that one of them annoys my parents. Dad swoops in from the hallway and pulls me into a hug. He smells like Easter eggs? Hey there, how's my little Sherlock doing? Kate Warren, I responded. She was the first female detective, so I'd rather be compared to her. Admirable, Mom says, setting her purse on the counter. But I still think this might be a good time to have a little chat about your hobby. Ah, something you guys want to tell me? Dad asks, giving me one more quick squeeze before stepping back. Unlike Mom, he sounds more curious than irritated. Wrinkling my nose, I drop my backpack and nudge it into the corner with my foot. Since a good detective asks a lot of questions, I decided to figure out why Dad is stinking up the house. I'll give you a full confession if you tell me why you smell like that. Dad frowns. Smell? Oh, do you mean the vinegar? I was cleaning our dishwasher and Google said it's the best thing for it. No wonder he smells like Easter eggs. When I was little, we used to put vinegar in water along with the little color tablet. I laugh. Google tells Dad a lot these days. Mom is an attorney at the law firm here in Forest Park, and she works so much Dad stays home. It's nice having someone here when I get out of school, but something tells me he gets a little lonely when my older brother Den and I are at school. Today he smells like vinegar. 2 days ago he singed his hair on his arm trying to toast the top of a creme brulee. And last week he decided to paint the bathroom by himself. He really should have hired someone because it looks striped even though it's not supposed to be. Mom says he likes to be busy. I say he needs to find a hobby, like me. Sleuthing is the perfect extracurricular. And once I convince my parents to let me launch the podcast I planned, What Hazel Knows, I'll have even more mysteries to solve. I let my eyes close and imagine listener comments flooding in. They'll tell me their mysteries to solve, and when I get famous, my parents will recognize my investigations are more than an annoyance. I may or may not have been spying. Just a little. I hold my thumb and index finger out and just barely apart to show him how little. But it paid off. I found out that Mrs. Corcoran has been letting that little brown mop of hers, Ernie, Dad says with a smirk. Yes, Ernie. Ernie is the one pooping on the lawn, I say breathlessly, remembering the thrill of the moment when Mrs. Corcoran turned around and her hood fell off. I love those moments. Mom and Dad exchange a look. Uh-oh. And what are you planning to do with that information once you got it, Mom posed? Keep it to yourself? Pfft, obviously not. That Ernie poop intel is too good to keep to myself. I mean, really. That's what I thought, Mom says with a sigh. That's the problem, Hazel. You're great at figuring things out. We love that about you. But when you involve yourself in other people's business, things get problematic. Dad is nodding now. Meanwhile, I feel like I'm wilting inside. So, you think it's better to let them keep fighting and never tell Mr. Andrews what I found out? Even anonymously, I ask? We think you need to let other people figure out for themselves sometimes, especially when they didn't ask you to be involved. Dad lifts his chin so I'm looking into his eyes. They're warm and crinkled around the edges. You have a great gift, Hazel. You really do. But with great power comes great responsibility. He says this last part dramatically as he's reading a superhero movie script. I raise a confused eyebrow. Dad chuckles. I mean that you have to learn to control your gifts so that you don't cause chaos everywhere you go. My shoulders sag. Mom reels me in for a hug. Even though I'm annoyed and embarrassed, I let her. We're not trying to be mean, honey. We just don't want you getting wrapped up in other people's problems. Take care of yourself. Enjoy being a kid and leave the adult problems to adults, okay? I nod like I agree, but I don't. Dog poop on a lawn doesn't seem like a very adult problem to me. Still, it made Mr. Andrews bananas. If I can help with something like that, why won't they let me? Shaking off the question, I force a smile to my face. None of that even matters. If I ever want permission to launch my podcast, I need to do what they want me to. Someday, though, What Hazel Knows will be huge and they'll take me seriously. They'll have to. So, that first chapter seems like nothing that would be coming out of a book like this, but the great thing about horror is that there can be a lot of humor in horror stories, even though there are scary elements of it, which is why I love horror so much. It can be graphic novels, it can have some science fiction put into it, it can have funny passages like dog poop on a lawn. It's really, you just gotta find where in horror you enjoy being. But if you would like to read this or any of Lindsay Currie's other books, we do have them. Give us a call and we'd be happy to set this or any other book aside. Happy Friday!